The phone number, if you would like to be a part of this here program, is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. This is an issue. I'm not sure it's an issue, but it is an issue. I know it's an issue because I've gotten an email from someone who's very angry with me. They felt misled. They were calling the program and it wouldn't work. They were missing a digit. What is the digit? Well, it's because they were spelling my name E-R-I-C on their phone pad. E-R-I-C-K, 877-97-ERIC, E-R-I-C-K. Yes, I spell my best of both worlds. I got the C, I got the K. E-R-I-C-K, 877-973-7425 is the number. You can get me on social media, E.W. Erickson, all over the place. Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, etc., etc., etc. And you can also, you can email me, eric@ewerickson.com. Now, we must begin, well, the audacity of the day. The kids at the border, they're going back in the cages, except this time they're not calling them cages. My goodness gracious. Listen to this. This is Pete Ducey with Jen Psaki at the White House.
To that point, why is the Biden administration reopening a temporary facility for migrant children in Texas?
Well, first, the policy of this administration, as you well know, but just for others, is not to expel unaccompanied children who arrive at the border. And the process, how it works, is that Customs and Border Control continue to transfer unaccompanied children to the HHS Office of Refugee Resettlement. That can take a couple of days. I just want to give this context because people need to understand the process. But it's a temporary reopening during COVID-19. Our intention is very much to close it, but we want to ensure that we can follow COVID protocols as unaccompanied minors come into the United States.
But it's the same facility that was open for a month in the Trump administration. Summer 2019, that is when Joe Biden said, under Trump, there have been horrifying scenes at the border of kids being kept in cages. And Kamala Harris said, basically, babies in cages is a human rights abuse being committed by the United States government. So how is this any different than that?
We very much feel that way. These are facilities. Let me be clear here. One, there's a pandemic going on. I'm sure you're not suggesting that we have children right next to each other in ways that are not COVID safe, are you?
I'm suggesting that Kamala Harris said that this facility, putting people in this facility, was a human rights abuse committed by the United States government. And Joe Biden said, under Trump, there have been horrifying scenes of at the border of kids being kept in cages. Now it's not under Trump; it's under Biden.
This is not kids being kept in cages. This is kids. This is a facility that was opened that's going to follow the same standards as other HHS facilities. It is not a replication. Certainly not. That is never our intention of replicating the immigration policies of the past administration.
Wow, that's a dodge. Wow, that's a dodge. And look, they've got the media. The media's already circling the wagons on this. This is one of the great ones. The Washington Post, this is from Aaron Blake of the Washington Post. The Washington Post, Silva Foster Frau wrote Monday night, the Biden administration has reactivated a child migrant facility in Texas. The facility in Carrizo Springs, Texas, can hold up to 700 teenage children and is being reopened because of a surge in unaccompanied minors arriving at the border and coronavirus-related restrictions on how many people existing facilities can hold, among other factors. So more than a few, folks, this is a stunning development from the administration of a president who made kids in cages a rallying cry. Kids in cages is now migrant facility for children. Where's this golden line? The first thing to note, again, this is the Washington Post analysis of Joe Biden putting kids in cages at the border after attacking Donald Trump for putting kids in cages at the border. It's very important to understand this is the Washington Post that attacked Donald Trump for kids in cages is now having to spin to avoid attacking Joe Biden for the same thing. The first thing to note is that the Post coverage didn't exactly hail this as a good thing. It quotes immigrant rights activists criticizing the development. One called it a huge step backwards, while another activist, who has protested at the facility, warned about what might result from the reopening. But even the activists pointed to the fact that this really isn't kids in cages. Rosie Barbara says she's worried the Biden administration won't make the situation better than it had been in the past at Carrizo, but added that, this is a direct quote, folks, "I consoled myself with the fact that it was considered the Cadillac of migrant child centers." You just heard that. Yeah, right. Yes. It's even under Trump, apparently. It was the Cadillac. The Cadillac of, well, thank goodness it wasn't the Pinto. The Yugo. It's the Yugo of child migrant worker decision. Here's the bigger point. Trump's policy on children at the border wasn't controversial merely because it resulted in children being held at the border, which is a long-standing reality. It was controversial because it forced children to be separated from their parents, given its hardline policy requiring the parents be held and not released into the country. This, in effect, made for more children that needed to be held. It was also controversial in large part because some of the conditions in which many of the children were then held, often in large groups behind chain-link fence. Whether these are called cages or chain-link partitions or anything else, though, that's not the situation at the border facility. Carrizo has many more facilities for those staying there, to the point where it costs $775 per day per child, nor is the administration forcing these children to be separated from their parents. Whatever one thinks about how these children are handled once they're taken into custody, it bears little resemblance. They're not being held behind chain-linked fences at a border patrol station because of a policy that requires them to be separated from their parents, but they're being held behind a chain-link fence. This is the spin they're doing. This is the spin they're doing. Breaking news, Nicolas Cage has changed his name to Nicholas Migrant Facility for Children. Oh my gosh. I mean, they've really changed nothing except, wait a second. They're actually going to use shipping containers. Instead of chain link fences alone, they're also going to use shipping containers so the children can feel like they're still with the coyotes who smuggled them to the border. But it's okay because it's Joe Biden. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who called it concentration camps, has only given mild criticism now to this. This is not okay. Like, it's never been okay. Like, never will be okay, no matter which administration or party. And then she added, our immigration system is like built on a carceral framework. It's no accident that challenging how we approach both these issues is considered controversial stances. They require reimagining our relationship to each other and challenging common assumptions like we take for granted. Oh my Lord. So they were concentration camps when Donald Trump did them, but they're not. Now this is media performative where they Joe Biden, he emotes. Joe Biden, he's emotive. He cares. Joe Biden, see, Donald Trump didn't care. So the cages, those nasty cages when Donald Trump did it, they were bad. But the nasty cages now, they're good because he cares. He cares. He's empathetic. He can care about the kids, and Donald Trump just wanted them to die. So the kids in cages in the coyote storage facilities, the tanker cars, the things that they use to smuggle them to the country, they're just going to leave them there, but they're going to do it with a smile because Biden is empathetic.
Hello, I'm Mark.
And I'm Murray.
And we're here to tell you about the word empathy.
Empathy, yes, empathy. Biden advisors have always said empathy was his superpower.
There is a lot of empathy.
It's about empathy.
Empathetic.
Empathy.
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 Empathy. Empathy.
Empathy.
Empathy. Empathy. Unbelievable empathy.
And some empathy.
I don't get it.
Empathy. See, Joe Biden's empathetic to the kids who are in the shipping containers in the chained in areas. He's empathetic to them. He's got them more spread out than Donald Trump did, and he wants to reunite them with the human traffickers who smuggled them into the country. Nothing says empathy like a president who wants to reunite you with a human trafficker and keep you in a shipping container, just like the human trafficker did before getting you into this country. Oh, you progressives, you're so upset with it, but it's true. It's true. Some of these kids, the whole reason the Trump administration separated them from their parents, in air quotes, is because some of them weren't with their parents. They were brought by coyotes. Some of them caught in shipping containers, and now Biden's got them back in the shipping containers, just like the human traffickers had them, so they can sleep well at night, wondering what's going to happen to them. And here's the thing. So just so everybody understands here, let me look right at my live stream camera here. Just so we all understand what's happening here, the Biden administration is doing just what the Trump administration did. The left has rationalized that it's okay now because the motives are pure. He's empathetic to them. So the human traffickers smuggled him into the United States in shipping containers, and Biden's going to put them in more shipping containers with chain link fences to keep their distance from each other. You're not mad at me. You're mad at him, but you can't admit it because you've invested so much emotional energy in how Trump is bad, and now Biden's doing the same thing. So you'd rather be mad at us for pointing it out, but it's okay because it's the Cadillac of facilities. It's not like he's in the Honda Accord of facilities or the Pinto or the Yugo. Why not the Lamborghini of facilities? Why not the Bentley of facilities? Or even the Maserati Quattraport of... So, well, can't have the Quattraport. That'd be 4 doors. They could escape. Oh, you people slept so well at night thinking... We're beyond Trump now. It's all good. Nope. Same thing as the last guy. You just don't want to admit it. Same thing as the last guy. You just can't bring yourself to recognize it. You got to sleep well at night, clicking your heels 3 times. It's the Cadillac of facilities. It's the Cadillac of facilities. It's the Cadillac of facilities. No, it's shipping containers and chain link fences, just like the human traffickers brought them over in.
You can follow Erick around social media at EW.
let's see more about the moral clarity of the Biden administration. I'm actually intrigued by all of this. The Canadians have decided to oppose the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics. They've decided, the Canadians unanimously, their Olympic committee has decided that it's time to be done with the Canadians, or with Beijing. It's time to move on. It's time to not give the Chinese the reward of the Olympics because of their human rights abuses. And they're not wrong. Clay Travis pointed this out on Twitter. Citing Chinese genocide, Canadian representatives of the Olympic Committee voted 266 to 0. I'm sorry, it's the parliament there, 266 to 0 for China to be stripped of the 2022 Winter Olympics. Will American leaders do the same thing? Well, some have stepped up to engage. One member of Congress, at least, Representative Gary Reschenthaler of Pennsylvania, has introduced a resolution to Congress urging the International Olympic Committee to rebid the 2022 Winter Games or risk having the U.S. and other countries boycott. I've got to say that it is probably something that the administration needs to get behind. Well, I don't know that they can. Here, you got kids in cages, and Guy Reschenthaler, he's a Republican, hasn't gotten any co-sponsors with this piece of legislation yet. He only just introduced it, though. China's treatment. This is from Clint Lamb at Outkick. China's treatment of its Uyghur minority is now being recognized as a genocide in Canada. On Monday, the vote passed 266 to 0 with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his cabinet abstaining. Canada is now the second country to determine that China's actions are considered genocide. The United States was the first to give such a label. It was a decision that was made when Donald Trump was still in office. What? Donald Trump did that? Not Joe Biden? According to a tweet from Dave Lawler with Axios, Canada is now calling upon the International Olympic Committee to move the 2022 Olympic Games. They're scheduled to take place in Beijing in February 2022. This comes days after Conservative leader Erin O'Toole called for the Winter Olympics to be relocated for the same reason. I think Canadians would agree that it would violate universal fundamental ethical principles to participate in an Olympic Games hosted by a country that's committing a genocide against part of its population. China's got to take a stand. O'Toole went so far as to say if things don't change and relocation isn't possible, Canada should pull its athletes. Now, the NBA won't take a stand on China. The Biden administration won't take a stand on China. Congress should. So, just to review for those of you who are so glad the authoritarian tyrant Donald Trump is gone. Kids are back in cages, but this time the cages are inside shipping containers, so they feel just like they're still with the human traffickers who smuggled them into the country. The administration is refusing to show any clarity on the Uyghur situation in China. You've got the Canadians exercising more moral authority. Remember, when Donald Trump was president, Canadian moral authority was a big deal. But now Joe Biden's president, so who cares about the Canadians, eh? The Canadian Parliament unanimously calls for the International Olympic Committee to get rid of the 2022 Beijing Games. Give an embarrassing black eye to the Chinese for ethnic extermination, which is what's going on in China with the Uyghur population. The Canadians have more moral authority than Disney. The mouse has become the rat who's perfectly willing to make money off the forced labor in China. And where is the American government in this? Remember, Joe Biden, we're supposed to be the shining city on the hill. We're supposed to be the light for the world. We've got to be the moral leader. Where's your moral leadership? Where's the moral leadership of the United States in this? I guess the moral leadership is back in cages at the border. Listen, y'all can be mad at me, but I don't write the rules here. I'm just following the Democrats' playbook. These are their issues, their talking points. They said Joe Biden comes in, the authoritarian, totalitarian regime of Donald Trump is gone. The moral leadership of the United States will reassert itself. When Donald Trump was there, look to Canada, the Canadian leadership. We need more like Justin Trudeau and the leadership there. Well, Justin Trudeau actually abstained from the vote, as did his cabinet. But the Canadian Parliament is all about it. You've got the NBA willing to lecture you on social justice in this country and turn a blind eye to the plight of the people of China. You've got Disney owns ESPN and turns the cameras away from protests about China at games. You've got Disney is willing to engage in business transactions in parts of China where the concentration camps exist. And you've got the Biden administration silent on the issue. Such moral clarity. The same moral clarity they give towards killing kids in this country. I'm sorry that they call it abortion in this country, so they don't have to deal with what it actually is. They can hide behind the euphemism. We're not really killing kids. This is a constitutional right we're talking about. Never mind, we're cracking open the skulls and sucking the brains out, tearing them limb from limb. No, don't worry about that.
15.
They couldn't survive outside the womb anyway. Neither can the Chinese Uyghurs outside the concentration camps. We know what China would do to them. I guess you're fine with that. Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Just one more point here that I really needs to be emphasized. The Biden administration came in with a bunch of people who have claimed moral clarity and moral certainty and moral assurance that their man and those surrounding him, they are good people with grand moral conviction, and that they are the ones who can right the wrongs of the Trump administration. And what they've done so far is come in and adopted a number of policies, including kids in cages, and all they've done is they've changed the language around it. There are still kids in cages. This time the cages are inside shipping containers, though. And they're morally righteous. So you have to give them a pass because it's the thought that counts. And actually what it really is, and we'll delve into this some today probably, is there's this postmodernism strain in America now where words can be gamed to mean different things. So the phrase kids in cages with Trump was bad, but kids in detainment facilities, even though they're still kids in cages, that's somehow better. It's the same thing. They just changed the word. Therefore, that makes it better. Deep down, you know that's not the case. Deep down, you know in your soul that nothing is really different. And you're probably, I would predict to you, you're going to see a lot of progressive backlash towards people like me and others pointing this out because they've got to hide the truth from themselves. They don't like you and me pointing it out because they have to confront it, and they would prefer not to confront the fact that the new guy, same as the old guy, except older. All right, let's go to the phones. Jim in Decatur, you're going to be next. Welcome.
Well, Republicans certainly we have our problems to deal with, and we're going to be tussling that for ages. But when I look at Jen Psaki, for me, she embodies just the sort of snooty, smarter than thou problem that Democrats have with themselves, that at some point you think they're going to have to start dealing with that themselves. The circle back and now circle the wagons approach she takes to the news is sort of predictable but tiresome. Mm-hmm. But they're going to have to deal with things like renaming the Uyghur concentration camps to Uyghur migrant centers that are the Cadillac of Uyghur migrant centers.
The Chinese should follow. I mean, just take a talking point from the Biden administration of the Washington Post. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure. Just take your pick. And now the question for us is, are we going to notice it and make something of it? I noticed, sadly, David Perdue's not going to be running anymore.
Yeah.
Pleasantly surprised, Kelly Loeffler's getting back in the race.
Well, I don't know if she is yet, Jim. She's building this outside group, and some people are interpreting it as building to run. But I think if she were running right off the bat, I kind of hope she waits and takes on Ossoff and builds up this ground game.
That would be nice. She wants to get in there. She's apparently got a little learning curve there, but God bless her. Be delighted to have her back in the game. So.
Yeah, well, look, we got to find someone. In fact, Jim, thank you for that. And this may be the perfect time to pivot. I wasn't going to get there until the next hour, but I guess I'll get there now. Where is the story? Who's going to run against Raphael Warnock? The Atlanta Journal-Constitution wants to know. If it's not Perdue, who's going to be the challenger? Greg Bluestein in the AJC. U.S. Senator Raphael Warnock was one half of a shocking Democratic sweep during Georgia's epic January 5th runoffs. Now he's preparing for a brutal re-election campaign for a full 6-year term. while fellow Democrat John Ossoff won't face the voters until 2026. Warnock must run again next year to keep his seat in the U.S. Senate. That's because his victory over incumbent Kelly Loeffler was to fill Johnny Isakson's term. Warnock, the pastor of Atlanta's Ebenezer Baptist Church, will be a formidable candidate. He's got sky-high name recognition, the power of incumbency, a robust political network, and a hefty fundraising list. But Republicans are already jockeying for a chance now that David Perdue has decided to forego. Kelly Loeffler is a possibility. Doug Collins is a possibility. Jeff Duncan is a possibility. Chris Carr, the Attorney General, is a possibility. Herschel Walker is a name being floated. There's a rumor that Walker could challenge Warnock. We've heard that people are trying to urge him to move back to Georgia to do it. He lives in Texas right now. Gary Black could possibly do it. There's Randy Evans, who was Trump's ambassador to Luxembourg. There's Kelvin King, the owner of the Atlanta Construction Company, who was a supporter of the president's. His wife, Janelle King, is a conservative activist who's joined the Georgia gang. There's Chief Justice Harold Melton. Let me read you this one. Almost as soon as Melton announced he would step down from the state Supreme Court bench, texts ping-ponged across the state house, speculating whether he could run for the Senate. Though Melton made clear in interviews he was eager to help put his 3 kids through college, code for making money in the private sector, he briefly considered applying for the Senate seat in 2019. A former lawyer for the Attorney General office and the executive counsel for Sonny Perdue, who put him on the bench, he's well regarded. Those supporters have floated Melton's name, seen him as a formidable candidate. He's not likely to run. A close ally said he's had no serious conversations about campaigning for the seat. Oh, but it's got some Republicans excited. He and Herschel Walker have them excited. Maybe, possibly. I don't know. I would hate to see another Doug Collins, Kelly Loeffler race. Doug Collins, by the way, is now on radio in Atlanta, 1690 a.m. And in the afternoons, I think he's up against Sean Hannity. And he's on a couple of stations in Virginia. There's a guy up in Virginia who's bought a couple, 4 small stations and is trying to build a radio network off of them and putting content on. And Collins is also practicing law up in Habersham County. And if I had to pick between Loeffler and Collins for a seat like this, I think I would go with Collins over Loeffler this time, because Loeffler already had her shot at Warnock. And I think she probably needs some time to be able to assert herself instead of being tied to the last campaign where she really had to tie herself to Trump. But maybe we need a fresh face. Maybe we got to have a fresh face. I kind of think maybe there's an opportunity for someone who's we're not even thinking of. What is Nick Ayers doing? I don't know. There's got to be an opportunity there for somebody. Because I think Warnock will be beatable. Because here's the thing. The reality is Georgia is not the blue state Democrats think it is. This, by the way, I think is why Stacey Abrams has lashed out so quickly and viciously towards Kelly Loeffler. It was really catty, actually. Trying to tie her to QAnon and Marjorie Taylor Greene and saying you can't really duplicate the work done and it's just going to be about voter suppression and scaring voters and stuff. No, it's not. I think the reason that Stacey Abrams has had to lash out so viciously is because, Abrams has this golden child image in the media. They love her. She can do no wrong. And the reality is that what Abrams did isn't really rocket science. It's what Republicans have done in the past. And if Loeffler is able to do it, now the media will never give Loeffler credit. The media will never be glowing towards Loeffler because she's got the wrong letter after her name. Really is kind of funny how the letter after someone's name determines the media coverage they get, which is one reason so many people don't trust the media anymore. But that's a separate topic. But, I mean, it's not really rocket science. Let me explain to you what you do. What you do is you raise a lot of money, and you find every voter who is registered who didn't vote in the runoff. You go to those voters and you ask them what issues they care about. And you begin compiling a database, and maybe some of them think that the election was stolen. So then you start mailing them and contacting them saying, hey, let me tell you how we've reformed the elections in Georgia. Let me tell you how we fixed the election. It's fair now. They can't steal it now. We're requiring photo ID for absentee ballots. Okay. So then beyond that, you go, what issues galvanize you? Well, guns. So then you start having your volunteers go knock on the doors. Say, did you know if the Democrats get back in power in Georgia, they're going to take your guns? Or it's education. Did you know that the Democrats in Georgia want to kill charter schools? Stacey Abrams is opposed to charter schools. And you start building a database. We've talked to this person about this issue. We've talked to this person about this issue. We've talked to them about education. We've talked to them about guns. They're with us now. And then you keep engaging them. You send the door knockers to their house in the off year where there's not even an election. You send them notes in the mail and say, hey, Kelly Loeffler is going to be on a conference call on Wednesday night, and she would love to have you on the conference call. And then you have all these people in the state, and you get on, and Kelly Loeffler has this conversation. It's phone screened, and people get to ask questions of her and engage with her in a town hall format. And the only people who are getting the notices to be on the call are the people they've contacted who are persuadable Republicans, and she's got a list of the topics. And then as people move into Georgia, you kind of probe where they come from, what is their background, and you build a database of the new people coming to Georgia. What can I do to convince this person to vote? And also, what can I do to convince this person not to vote? This isn't rocket science. I used to do this for a living. It's not that hard. The data is publicly available, and the Republicans and Democrats both have amazing databases now with all the information compiled. All you got to do is deploy it. Stacey Abrams would have you believe that it is some mythical, magical creation sprung from her head like Athena from Zeus, and that no one else has ever been able to do this. No one else will ever be able to do this. It is only Stacey Abrams who has made this possible. It ignores the history of the state of Georgia. It ignores what the Republicans used to do and then abandoned in the state. It ignores a whole lot of stuff to claim that. The reality is this. The Republicans, with Kelly Loeffler's money and her organization and the team she has around her, and she's got a really good team around her, they can organize the Republicans in the same way Stacey Abrams did. And there are more of us than there are of them nationwide. I actually think at this point there are more people left of center than right of center nationwide. In Georgia, there are more of us right of center than there are left of center. There are still more Republicans in Georgia than Democrats. All you got to do is turn them out. All you got to do is figure out how to get them out. They didn't turn out in January, some of them because they didn't like the candidates, some of them because they thought the candidates were tied to Trump, some of them because they thought the candidates were run away from Trump, overwhelmingly because they thought it didn't matter. The Democrats were going to steal it anyway. John Ossoff won by 52,000 votes. 400 some odd thousand Republicans didn't turn out. Perdue could have easily won that if he'd been able to get them out. Most of those people, and I've talked to a lot of the people behind the scenes, and they pointed out that it is overwhelmingly, it was Republicans, 75% of the people who did not turn out, 75% of the Republicans who didn't turn out believed that there was no point because the race was going to be stolen. I mean, it's not like we don't know who those people are. We've got an entire list of people who turned out in November who didn't turn out in January, and people did pay money to go talk to those people and find out why they didn't show up. And we know 75% of them thought it was going to be stolen. It didn't matter. The talking point about the stolen election blew up in the Republicans' faces. And Loeffler knows that. And the Republicans in the state legislature in Georgia know that. So what they can do is they can change the law in little ways, knowing the Democrats are going to scream about it. By the way, Stacey Abrams already beginning to run an ad campaign against the changes in the law. They can't help themselves. They're going to ratify the Republican belief that they fixed the problem. When all of the technical tweaks are actually rather minor, the Democrats are blowing this up so big it's going to give the GOP a win. See, Stacey Abrams hates what we're doing, and we must have done something right. and it'll work. I told y'all this was going to happen. The Democrats can't help themselves. These changes are so small, but will give enough confidence to people that they actually worked. Stacey Abrams will do nothing but help them by blowing it up and making it into something really, really big. The GOP has no better friend in this than Stacey Abrams right now, because she is intellectually disposed to the idea that Republicans are really suppressing the vote. And so the slightest whiff of it is something that makes her go to a 12 on a 10-point scale. And the Republicans will just amplify her message. Look, we must be doing it right. Stacey Abrams is mad. Kelly Loeffler must be doing something right. Stacey Abrams come out swinging against her effort. The reality is, honestly, y'all, really, it is not magical. It's not mysterious. It's not powered by unicorn farts. You would think it was all those things if you listen to Abrams and the Democrats. Nope. It is just cut and dry, grassroots politics 101. Loeffler has one of the best teams doing this now, and the Democrats are spitting mad about it because they know there are more of us than there are of them.
You can follow Erick around social.
Hello there. It is Erick Erickson here. The phone number, if you want to be a part of the program, 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Folks, update your windows. Update your windows. Now, I'm not talking about your house windows. I'm talking about your operating system for your computer. So, you know, they had that attack on the... I shouldn't be laughing about this. I'm sorry. There was the attack on the water facility in Florida. Hackers got in and were able to manipulate the chemical concentrations in water. Thankfully, someone saw it and was able to stop the increase in sodium hydroxide, or lye, in the water treatment facility. On February 5th, this is from the Joint Cybersecurity Task Force. On February 5th, 2021, unidentified cyber actors obtained unauthorized access to the supervisory control and data acquisition system at a Florida drinking water treatment facility. The identified actors used the system software to increase the amount of sodium hydroxide, a caustic chemical, as part of the water treatment process. Water treatment plant personnel immediately noticed the change in dosing amounts and corrected the issue before the system software detected the manipulation and alarmed due to the unauthorized change. As a result, the water treatment process remained unaffected and continued to operate as normal, thankfully. The cyber actors likely accessed the system by exploiting cybersecurity weaknesses, including poor password security and an outdated operating system. Early information indicates it is possible that a desktop sharing software such as TeamViewer may have been used to gain unauthorized access to the system. The FBI, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center have observed cyber criminals targeting and exploiting desktop sharing software and computer networks running operating systems with end-of-life status to gain unauthorized access. Desktop sharing software, which has multiple legitimate uses, such as enabling telework, remote technical support, and file transfers, can also be exploited through malicious actors' use of social engineering tactics. Windows 7 will become more susceptible to exploitation due to lack of security updates and the discovery of new vulnerabilities. Microsoft and other industry professionals strongly recommend upgrading computer systems to an actively supported operating system. That, my friends, is what happened. The water treatment facility was using Windows 7. And it's not updated. In fact, it appears that Microsoft is going to end the extended security update plan for Windows 7 in January of 2023 and are less and less likely to update stuff more and more on Windows 7. So you got to update to Windows 10. Now, the easy way to update to Windows 10 is to go get the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine, and Bill Gates will implant a microchip in you through the vaccine, and it will cause you to be on the latest Windows software, and you'll be able to update the Windows software very easily. No more blue screens of death. I can't believe people believe the microchip. I'm sorry. I realize that people are stupid, but people actually believe Bill Gates is injecting microchips into people's bodies. Oh my gosh, there is a sucker born every minute. But you know, if he does, keep your Windows system updated. Can you imagine the hacker hacking your microchip because you haven't updated to Windows 10? The blue screen of death, it'll be the blue body of death. Just if you run a water treatment facility, please get a Mac or update your Windows operating system, because the hackers, they want to hack you. Please don't get hacked. We don't want lye in our water. Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here, the Erick Erickson Show. The phone number, you can call me, 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Really glad to have you with me today. I hope the weather is good where you are. It is not. I'm excited because I got good weather today. I got to travel. I got to hit the road. I'm actually interviewing the president of Omaha Steaks today, which is kind of funny. So I do an advertising deal with them on my local show in Atlanta on WSB. They're actually about to become an advertiser on this program as well. I've been a customer of theirs for probably 25 or 30 years. Since I was in college, I've been a customer of theirs. And it's kind of cool, actually. You get on radio and you start advertising for stuff that, like Sherry's Berries, I've given gifts forever to family members, and now Omaha Steaks, and I get to interview the head of the company who's part of the family. It's actually a cool story. Looking forward to being able to do that. And then I got to hit the road and go from Macon to Atlanta this afternoon and get there in time for a haircut and my show. We'll see if I can do it. I'm sure y'all cared. I don't even want to spend 15 minutes on this story, but I want to spend a couple of minutes on this story. I actually am glad to see this story. For a lot of reasons, I'm glad to see this story. To some people, this isn't going to sound like your feel-good story of the day, but I actually think this is your feel-good story of the day. The Southern Baptist Convention Executive Committee has decided to disfellowship, I prefer defellowship, a church in Kennesaw, Georgia. The church is Townview Baptist Church in Kennesaw. The reason that the Southern Baptist Convention Executive Committee has decided to disfellowship it is because Townview Baptist Church has decided to affirm LGBTQ members. They've essentially granted church membership to individuals in the gay community. There's a transgender person there as well. And likewise, the Southern Baptist Convention is doing this with St. Matthew's Baptist Church in Louisville, Kentucky, for the same reason. The Southern Baptist Convention subscribes to Orthodox biblical ethics, biblical sexual ethic, that marriage is between a man and a woman, and God made us male and female. And we don't get to pick and choose our gender, and the sanctity of marriage and biblical sexuality is sex after marriage and between people of the opposite sex. And so the Southern Baptist Convention is standing up for their biblical orthodoxy. And these two churches, Townview Baptist Church here in Kennesaw, Georgia, and the St. Matthew's Baptist Church in Louisville, Kentucky, disagree. They've gone in a different direction. Now, you and I can disagree. This is the important thing. You and I can disagree with the directions that these churches have decided to go. Or you could disagree with the Southern Baptist Convention. I'm on the side of the convention. I think biblical sexual ethic is a thing. You may disagree with the Christian church, but there are 3 billion people on planet Earth who would disagree with you. Why I say this is the feel-good story of the day is the SBC's like, hey, we're going to disfellowship you guys because we believe this. And we want the people who come to the convention to subscribe to this view as well. And the church's positions are, okay, thanks, guys. Have a nice life. In fact, I've just got to commend James Conrad, who's the pastor in charge of the church in Kennesaw. He says that these members have helped the church become a better church. They're growing and learning together. He says, we have a transgender woman working with us, and I've told her if I get it wrong, just let us know. These folks have shown us tremendous grace. Everyone's welcome here. We believe that is the welcome that Jesus would offer. And then he says this, we're not mad at anyone. We're not mad at the SBC. We don't want to convey that. We also don't want to be used by any group for any agenda. You know what? So I want to say thanks to them. I think this is the way churches that have chosen to disagree on what is increasingly becoming a contentious issue in culture, and I think people in society who have chosen to disagree on a contentious issue, this is the way they should behave towards each other. They're agreeing to disagree, and they're parting ways with each other. And they're not angry. This is a disagreement over a fundamental view of Christian orthodoxy. And they're like, all right. In fact, they note that they would have been surprised had they not done it. In fact, this is I love this pastor. I don't know him, but I love his quotes in this story. We know it happened. We knew it was going to happen. Had they decided not to, that would have really made the news. Yes. Look, this is maybe I do want to spend more time on this than maybe I should. I've got friends of mine who are gay. Some of my best friends are gay, and they know I subscribe to biblical sexual orthodoxy, and I know they don't. And it's not a source of contention in our relationship. I mean, if you know anything about actual Christianity, you know we're all going to hell. Save for the saving grace of Christ. And there's got to be some level of Christian humility involved in these relationships and some level of grace between people in a civil society that's not a theocracy where we all got to get along through it together. And there's this idea that if you subscribe to a biblical sexual orthodoxy that is orthodox, that somehow you can't be friends with people who disagree with you. How can you be friends with a gay person? You know, I get this from conservative friends of mine who can't understand how can I be friends with a Democrat. Well, you know, the Bible says love your neighbor, so just love your neighbor. You disagree on this topic. I despise fruit. I hate fruit, y'all. I'll eat an apple. I actually like apples, but only apples that are like raw apples. I don't want a baked apple. I don't want an apple pie. I realize that makes me un-American. I don't like it. I used to eat bananas, but my grandfather had no teeth, and he would eat soggy cornflakes and bananas. And as a kid, it just grossed me out so much. I can't eat a banana anymore. And I hate grapes. The one thing Jesus got wrong in the Bible was turning water to wine instead of bourbon, because I don't like grapes. Grapes are awful. Grapes are just disgusting. And I got friends who love fruit. I love vegetables. Believe it or not, I'll eat a Brussels sprout sooner than I'd eat a grape. I love asparagus. And you know what? When I go out to dinner with friends, I got friends who will get fruit. I'm the guy who says, look, I don't even want the strawberry garnish on the plate. And we go about our business and we find common ground, and they can eat the fruit off my plate. I'll eat the vegetables off their plate. Doesn't matter. We find things to have in common, and we can be different. We can have different opinions on our food tastes, and we can still hang out together and be friends. We should be able to have different political opinions and hang out and be friends. We should be able to have different opinions on scripture and still be friends. And sometimes you decide you can't be friends, but that doesn't mean you have to be a raging biblical donkey towards the other guy. And this is one of my frustrations with 21st century America now, is we've gotten so tribal as a people that I can only be friends with people who agree with me. I know people who treat me with suspicion who used to not, because I talk about being friends with people who are gay or people who are Democrats. It's kind of funny. I think they would rather. I've got a gay friend who's a conservative. They're cool with that. Just not the Democrat. People are weird. But I think you got to love your neighbor. And I had somebody text me the other day, say, you just sound so preachy on this. I don't mean to sound preachy on this. I really believe it. And I find it, I have a hard time relating to the people who can't understand that I like to be friends with people who disagree with me on fundamental things, because I learned something. I like to learn. You know, I got to be honest with you. I am terrible these days at reading, even the Bible. I'm terrible at reading. Law school burned me out on reading, and then I got into seminary, and you would have to read so many books. You know what I read? Y'all are going to think this is maybe the dumbest thing ever. You know what I read? I read cookbooks. I know. Okay, so I've got, y'all, I collect cookbooks. I've got one sitting right here, Homesick Texan, a buddy of mine recommended to me. And I read cookbooks, and I rarely cook the recipes out of the cookbooks per se. I like to cook, and I like to take the ideas from cookbooks and put them into new things. Like, oh, I never thought about that spice and herb combination. Let me try it. Let me blend it together, see if it's something. I read cookbooks. I have such a hard time reading books these days, and just being focused on books. And I buy them. There's a terminology for you buy books and you don't actually read them. I keep buying books, and I can't get through them. But I love to learn new stuff. And I used to learn a ton of stuff in reading books, and now I'm so busy, I don't have time for it. But I can hang out with smart people who disagree with me, and I can learn so much from them. I can learn so much from people who don't see the world the way I see the world. In fact, I can learn more from a person who doesn't see the world the way I see the world than from someone who sees it exactly as I see it. Because, we're just echo chambers. And part of the problem in the world today, I think, is that we've gotten so tribal, and when we're all starting to get bubbles. It used to be really progressives did this the most. They would live in a progressive enclave. We got, by my office in Atlanta, it is a progressive enclave. Y'all, the only time I've ever genuinely been made to feel uncomfortable in a restaurant is I went into a Starbucks. Everybody should feel uncomfortable in Starbucks and it's trash coffee, but nonetheless, I went into a Starbucks, and it was in this part of Atlanta that is highly progressive, highly gay, and I was recognized by a couple of the gay couples who were in there and some of the clear progressives in there. And I was made genuinely to feel unwelcome, to the point that the manager asked me to wait outside. And I just thought, this is ridiculous. These people don't know me. They heard what someone else said about me. But these people, they genuinely were upset that I had invaded their safe space because they were in a bubble. And I think that we should be penetrating each other's safe spaces to a degree so that we can learn from each other, or at least learn that, we see the other side so often now as evil. They're evil. They're evil. They believe these things that I think are evil. I think abortion is a moral abomination. Abortion is evil. But I think we're all sinners, and we're all going to hell. That's my theological worldview, save for the saving grace of Christ. So, bringing this full circle, and again, I didn't mean to spend this much time on it, but it makes me happy. It makes me happy to see that the Reverend James Conrad of Townview Baptist Church in Kennesaw is willing to smile and say, see you guys, we're going our way, y'all go your way. And it makes me happy to see the Southern Baptist Convention say, we believe this thing and you no longer do, and so we have to part ways with each other, lovingly part ways with each other, because our convention has decided these things really matter to us in terms of who we want to come vote and participate in and shape our future. And so they're holding biblical orthodoxy. The other side has decided to move to something new that they believe also reflects their faith. And we can disagree on that. And they can part ways and not hire lawyers and not drag it into the press and not attack each other and not sue each other and not bash each other. This is how you should live your life. This is how you should do it when you disagree. Say, all right, have a nice life. If you can't break bread together, and then still maybe break bread together where you can. A lot of things that this church and the SBC may do, maybe they'll find ways to break bread together even as they disagree on biblical orthodoxy. And you can't have the voting membership there. You can't have the folks go to the Southern Baptist Convention to vote. And that's fine. It's fine to see people agree to disagree on this sort of stuff and not trash each other and go to war with each other. Nowadays, it just seems like everybody's got to go war with each other. Everybody's going to fight. You don't have to all the time. And I just again, and I don't mean to sound preachy to the woman who heard me yesterday and said I sounded preachy talking about loving your neighbor. I like to be friends with people who disagree with me. I find it rewarding to a degree that we can find that so much of life now is about politics. Finding friends with whom you know what? I can't talk politics with you because all we're going to do is argue. Let's find some common ground on something else. I got a buddy of mine here in Macon. We disagree pretty much everything politically. We're going to go fishing together because we can agree on that. We can sit on the front porch and have a beer together and talk about life and raising kids and family. And we can even talk Jesus because we actually agree a lot on Jesus, even as we disagree politically on stuff. It's nice. It's rewarding. It's good for my soul to be able to do that. And I don't understand the people who are mad at me because I would want to do that. I learned so much. I at least find a way to understand the way other people view the world so that maybe I can explain my side better to them. I wish more people did this. And this isn't a pat myself on the back. It's just whatever happened to just being a nice person and loving your neighbor. That seems so passé these days. And yet I think we need it more than ever.
Well connected and well respected. It's
This hour of the program is brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan in Noonan, Georgia. The Frost family. If you're involved in conservative politics, you probably know the Frost family here in Georgia. They've been active for a very long time. Good Christian family. They've been doing First Liberty Building and Loan since 1993. And they like to help businesses grow. And they're really creative sometimes in how they can find financing for businesses, particularly right now. So many banks are telling businesses no because they're risk averse right now. And the Frost want to help you get to yes. And if you're talking, and we're talking 6-figure loans now, we're not talking small deals. They help businesses. So if you are responsible for the finances of a business, you're trying to grow, you need access to capital, etc., then you need to check out First Liberty Building and Loan. They are really good people, and they want to help you. And if you just go to firstlibertyga.com, firstlibertyga.com, you can spend 5 minutes with them, get the phone number, call them, spend 5 minutes with them, see if they're a good fit for your business. I hope they will be, and y'all can have a wonderful business relationship together. And thanks very much to First Liberty Building and Loan for their sponsorship. They are our longest sponsors. They've been with us the whole way through. They helped us get off the ground. If you would like to advertise, we're going to have some changes coming, and if you want to get in on the ground floor, you probably want to go on and start reaching out to us. I know we've got Omaha Steaks coming and a few others, which I'm excited about. But if you want to advertise, we are now all over the state of Georgia. By the way, WLBB in Carrollton, welcome. Glad to finally have my in-laws be able to listen to me on their hometown station. But if you want to advertise, let us know. I am really excited about the future of this program and things that are coming about which I cannot tell you. A buddy of mine just texted me and said, have you heard about the Marine who wasn't out front of the West Wing? What was going on? So before this becomes some sort of rumor or whatnot, if the president is in the Oval Office, a Marine stands out front of the West Wing. And you can tell if the president, like if the Queen is at Buckingham Palace or if the Queen is at Windsor Castle, the royal standard flies above wherever she is. So the moment she leaves Buckingham Palace to go to Parliament, they take the flag down. As she's coming back in the gate, they raise it. She goes to Windsor Castle, it's taken down from Buckingham Palace and it's put up at Windsor Castle. If she goes up to Sandringham or to Balmoral, the standard flies wherever she is. And that's how you know where the Queen is. Well, the president is where he is if he's in the White House because there's a Marine who stands outside the West Wing. And if the Marine is there, the president's in the Oval Office. And if the Marine is not there, the president is not in the Oval Office. Well, the president supposedly was in the Oval Office the other day and the Marine was not there. And it got reporters from multiple outlets say, what's going on here? And Jen Psaki, the White House press secretary, so, well, it doesn't necessarily, sometimes the Marine, if there's a visitor and he's escorted a visitor, he's not at the door. It doesn't mean he's there at all times and can't leave the post. She didn't really answer the question. I have the answer for you. The Marine had to go get his COVID test. Axios reporting and confirmed the Marine had to get his COVID test and had to leave his post to get it done. And there wasn't a backup, so there was no one at the door with the president in the Oval Office. All right, I got to read y'all an email. Listener Greg, who is still listening. Listener Greg, subject, not my apple pie pool. Can we start a betting pool to guess how many emails you are about to get that say, but you haven't tried my apple pie? Put me down for the 50 emails count. Well, let's see. I made my comment about not liking apple pie 15, 20 minutes ago. We've gotten 7 so far, Greg. 7 emails in so far that if only I would try there. My wife makes the best apple pie. I have tried. It's a texture thing, y'all. I'm sorry. Let me reset that. Like, what the hell? Erickson's lost his mind. I was commenting earlier on people you disagree with and still being friends. And I have friends who love fruit and hate vegetables, and I actually like vegetables. And I'm not sure there's a vegetable I won't eat. But by and large, I don't like fruit. I never have. I like sweet things, but I like them from like nice, sweet, unhealthy things. Chocolate. Otherwise, I like savory things. So I'll eat an asparagus. I'll eat a Brussels sprout. I will eat. I'll eat zucchini. It's not my favorite. I'll eat squash. Eggplant. It's not my favorite, but I'll eat it. I would rather that than a cherry or a grape or a strawberry or a peach. Listen, y'all, I'm sorry. I shouldn't say this. Being on the radio in Georgia, I don't even like the smell of peaches. My wife makes peach preserves. And I gotta leave because I don't like the smell. I don't like fruit. And I've tried apple pie. My wife actually makes the best apple pie. She makes an apple pie. And she's got the crust on top, and she pours praline over it. Praline, for those of you in Georgia. And it's apparently fantastic, but it's the texture and no. You know, the one pie that I will eat, the one fruit pie that I will eat is pumpkin pie, which is actually really butternut squash, which you can argue over whether it's a gourd or a gourd or a fruit or all of the above. But nope. My mother is texting me. This was not the vegetable. Be careful eating asparagus. Can cause gout. My dad is dealing with that. Too much information for the listener audience. Hey, my mom emailed during the show. I love you, Mom. I love asparagus. When I was in college, my college roommate, Brian, his grandfather was a farmer. And the only asparagus I had ever encountered as a kid was my dad would eat the canned Jolly Green Giant asparagus. Ugh, I can smell it in my head, and I'm trying not to gag. And I never understood, how could you eat something that horrible? And then when I was in college, my roommate, Brian, his grandfather was a farmer. And for Easter, I went to his house for Easter one time, and they put asparagus on the plate, and I didn't want to eat them. And his mother was one of the most intimidating women I've ever known. He's like, why are you eating your asparagus? Because I don't like them. Have you ever eaten them before? It's like, well, my dad got them out of a can. And, fresh asparagus. They're more like, sure enough, they're like green beans. I could eat asparagus. I throw asparagus on the grill, mix them up with some olive oil, some garlic, and some lemon rind, and like lemon zest. Throw them on the grill. It's incredible. I love asparagus. Your pee stinks after you eat them. TMI again, but still, I love asparagus. Asparagus. And if you wrap bacon, so I've got a Rectech grill. We are so far off the reservation today, folks. I'm sorry. Are we allowed to say that anymore? Did I just commit a hate crime by using that phrase? Someone's going to report me. Take a Brussels sprout. Actually, take a slab of bacon and cut it in half. Not lengthwise, widthwise. Cut it in half. And then take Brussels sprouts and cut the Brussels sprouts lengthwise in half. And then take the bacon. No, don't wrap the Brussels sprouts in the bacon, sucker. No. Take the bacon and put it in a bowl and put brown sugar on the bacon and rub it all together. And then wrap the bacon around the Brussels sprouts. Now you could put it in the oven if you want for about 15 minutes, and the bacon gets crispy, the Brussels sprouts get soft, the fat gets rendered, and it's glorious. But if you really want to do it, if you've got a pellet grill or a smoker, put it in the smoker on 250 and leave it till the bacon gets crisp. It'll get smoky from the smoker. The Brussels sprouts get tender. The brown sugar caramelizes. Then you got a dessert and a vegetable together. And you can say, I'm eating my Brussels sprouts, Mom. Maybe I need to make that the recipe. I don't even know what recipe goes out today. If y'all want the recipe today, you should text the word recipe to 33777. Some recipe is going out sometime around noon today, and you should all be on the subscriber list for the recipes. No charge at all. You don't get ads from it. You just get a recipe every week because I like to cook. That's why I'm fat. Now, I should move on to actual news before Charlie sends me an email saying, this is the worst monologue you've done since last week. An income tax may be coming to Georgia. Almost, this is from James Salzer. This guy is a genius. So if you ever read the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the two names you have to watch for in the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Greg Bluestein, best political reporter in the state of Georgia, and James Salzer. James Salzer knows the budget of the state of Georgia better than the people who write the budget of the state of Georgia. Almost a year after the COVID-19 pandemic sent the economy tumbling and forced Georgia lawmakers to reduce spending, a revenue recovery has state lawmakers looking to cut state income taxes. House Ways and Means Chairman Shaw Blackman, Republican of Bon Air, filed legislation this week to increase the standard deduction Georgians can take when they do their income taxes. By reducing the amount of income taxed, House Bill 593 would cut what's owed by millions of Georgians who use the standard deduction when they fill out their returns. It's the fairest way to help the most people keep more of their money, Blackman said. If we're able to afford it, we ought to let people keep some more of their money. While the tax cut would be relatively small, less than $100 for a married couple filing jointly, Blackman said it would cost the state about $120 million a year, and particularly if Congress passes a massive new $1.9 trillion COVID-19 relief package, which would include more state aid, a much larger state tax cut may be on the way. None of that could have been foreseen last year when lawmakers cut state spending by $2.2 billion because they feared tax collections would plummet due to COVID. That didn't happen. In fact, state tax collections have increased 6.3% during the first 7 months of this fiscal year. Blackman said that was in part because of a bill lawmakers passed in 2020 that helped the state increase sales tax collections from customers on internet and app-based businesses, taxes that were already due but often not paid. Under Blackman's bill, the standard deduction for a single taxpayer would increase by $800. For a married couple filing a joint return, $1,100. Georgians over 65 or blind would get an additional $1,300 deduction. Blackman's committee considered tax legislation, so it should have no trouble making it to the House floor for a vote. It also has the backing of David Ralston. Just before the General Assembly suspended in 2020, Ralston pushed a plan to reduce the state income tax rate, a move that would have saved taxpayers $250 million. The tax cut went by the wayside because by the time lawmakers returned in June, they feared a revenue plunge. Ralston has made cutting taxes a signature issue for House Republicans. While the General Assembly's backfilled some of the spending cuts it made in June, about $1 billion was not restored, including hundreds of millions of dollars reduced for school budgets. Some advocates also say there's a better way to get tax relief to Georgians in need. The liberal Georgia Budget and Policy Institute says, we understand and appreciate the desire to give relief to struggling Georgians by raising the standard deduction. However, though the bill will allow Georgians to save up to $75 per year in taxes, make a much-needed upward adjustment to the state's low standard deduction, more is needed to move the needle for working families. They want a state tax credit. I gotta tell you, I think this is a good idea. I warn you that one of the things some Republicans in the legislature want to do is a streaming tax. They want to stream. If you get Netflix or you get HBO Max, I've done an entire monologue on all the streaming service now. You got Apple TV Plus. You got the iTunes stuff. You get what, Apple Music. You get Spotify. You get Netflix. You get HBO Max. You get all the streaming services. You get the Audible books by Kindle or by Amazon and the like. And they want to tax your streaming service. Let's hope they don't tax your streaming service. That would be ridiculous for Republicans to tax a streaming service. But cutting raising the standard deduction, I think, is a good thing. It's small, but it's meaningful. And yeah, we can do more, but I think we're headed in the right direction. I want to call your attention to one thing, though. One thing. State tax collections have increased 6.3%. And since January, there's been a 7.5% improvement. Individual tax collections are up 6.3%. Sales tax collections are up 8.8%. Income tax is up 51.2%. Why? Why? I'm working on my low rumbly voice. Why? Because of Brian Kemp. I know we're not supposed to say nice things about him anymore. He's the bad guy because he stole an election he had nothing to do with. It's really remarkable how Brian Kemp had the power to do all these things, even though the Constitution says he couldn't do them. Brian Kemp saved this state. You may not like to hear it if you're a Democrat because you think he stole it from Stacey Abrams. You may not like to hear it if you're a Trump supporter because you think he stole it from Donald Trump or didn't do enough to stop the steal. Fact of the matter is, Brian Kemp has saved this state. He got it open sooner than anybody wanted him to get it open. He kept it open. When they demanded, he closed it again. Remember that the Democrats in the state legislature, James Beverly, he's now the House Minority Leader. After Brian Kemp gave his State of the State address, you know what James Beverly said? This is the House Democratic Leader. You know what he said? That Kemp should have shut down the state sooner and kept it shut longer. Yep. That's the Democratic position in Georgia. Kemp should have shut the state down sooner and kept the state shut down longer. The results speak for themselves. Georgia's outpacing the rest of the nation in tax revenue generated after the pandemic. Income tax increase, or not income tax increase, but tax revenue to the state increase. Less reduction in take-home pay than any other state. Bigger economic rebound. Bigger net exporter to other nations. All of the data is headed in the direction you want it to head. You know, part of that is, I think, that he's got a background as a small businessman. You know, I'm going to tell a story. I have a relative who will remain nameless. I have a relative who really likes Brian Kemp. The reason this relative likes Brian Kemp, believe it or not, y'all, his hands. You know, this is actually pretty perceptive, actually. If you ever shake Brian Kemp's hand, his hands are kind of rough. This relative of mine who grew up on a farm says those are the hands of someone who's actually worked for a living. And he was in building and contracting and stuff like that. And yeah, I guess so. So this relative of mine likes Brian Kemp because based on his handshake, not that he has a firm grip, I mean, he does, but not that, just that his hands are rough. That this is a man who's worked with his hands and has labored. And I think there's something to be said about that. I'm not going to wax poetic about the man's hands. That's kind of creepy to me. But nonetheless, this relative of mine is sold on the guy as practicing what he preaches, that this is a person who's worked in the real world and not had some cushy bureaucratic job or something like that all of his life, that he works with his hands on his farm, in construction and the like. And you could tell by his practical business experience, like, for example, coming out when we had the massive surge, and you had reporters say, why aren't you going to shut down the state? Other states have shut down. Why aren't you shutting down non-essential businesses? And his response was, in his kind of all shuck Southern accent that the guy has, that who's it for our state to determine whether or not your business is essential if it's your only means of income? Wisdom in that. A lot of wisdom in that. You're going to get a tax cut. This is going to pass the House, it's going to pass the Senate, and it's going to get signed by the governor. You're going to get a tax cut here in Georgia. It's not going to be big, but it's going to be something. And you're going to get it because despite being attacked by the president, by the media, by even Republicans and Democrats here in Georgia, the governor of Georgia reopened the state far sooner than anyone wanted him to, kept it open when they wanted him to shut it down again, and generated economic activity in Georgia no other state has been able to replicate. You're going to get a tax cut because of that. And well, when you're mad and you're angry and you think he didn't stop a steal that never was stolen and all that, you should remember that it is his fiscal stewardship and his willingness to get the state open, even when President Trump told him to keep it shut down, that has got you to the point where you're going to get a tax cut, and it's going to be the only state this year in the union that sees a tax cut because of the fiscal responsibility and the fiscal policies he put in place.
Want to be on the show? Call Eric now.
I'm debating whether or not to shame a friend of mine. Should I use, am I being a bully if I shame a friend of mine who just sent me his workout playlist for today? Oh dear. He's listening to musicals and more. We've gotten past Over the Rainbow. Right now we're at Never Enough from The Greatest Showman. Coming up next, Pure Imagination, sung by Gene Wilder from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. See, this is what I mean about having friends that you disagree with, because then you can passively aggressively talk about them on the radio. and he's not listening to me right now. I'm going to have to do an entire monologue about this and shame him. So the Politico is running a story today. You know, I talked about the Neera Tanden thing yesterday. It looks like Neera Tanden probably can't be confirmed. She's the Office of Management and Budget nominee by the Biden administration. Democrats and Republicans alike told Biden, don't pick her. Don't pick her. She was the head of Center for American Progress, a left-wing think tank that became a mouthpiece for the Clintons, which alienated progressives because they went after Bernie Sanders, and then alienated Republicans for going after him. She was able to get the Biden administration to put one of her staffers in the Office of Management and Budget, who is a political hatchet man, and it looks like her nomination is gonna be dead. The White House is starting to talk about moving beyond it. It depends on if Lisa Murkowski will vote for her, given what this woman said about Lisa Murkowski. I doubt she will. So the Politico has this story: how the White House botched the Neera Tanden nomination. They believed they could hold the party and that a little bit of contrition and some outside validators would suffice. It's not looking good. How the White House botched her nomination? They nominated her. They should have known better on this one. I was actually shocked that they would pick her to be the head of OMB. You know, if you want to put her in a non-appointed position, go for it. But the head of Office of Management and Budget, really? No. If you know anything about this woman, you could know that she was not going to do this. And now it appears Kristen Sinema, who is on the committee that will have to confirm her, may vote against her as well. And that makes her nomination dead. And it's striking to see a Biden misstep. And they're trying, of course, you know what's going to happen. The media is going to do their very best to spin that it's not a defeat for Biden. It's those nasty Republicans. They'll put it all on the. It's those nasty Republicans that did this. Shame on those nasty Republicans. Joe Biden called for unity, and they don't believe in unity. Well, except it was Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema as well. They are relishing, by the way, being the independent mavericks in the Senate. Sinema is doing what she needs to do to get herself reelected in Arizona. She can be a Democrat from Arizona who sides with the Republicans just enough that even a lot of Republicans in Arizona who don't like Trump, clearly, will back her.
30.
I'm just kind of shocked that the Bidens, with a good political team, objectively a good Democratic political team around them, would botch this so early on by even nominating her. I mean, look, I'm not a Democrat,
15.
and I could have called this one out of the gate that Joe Manchin and Kristen, there's no way they would go with a woman like this for that. It had nothing to do with her being a woman. It has to do with her being a hatchet job for the Clintons. Greetings, welcome. Glad to have you with me. I hope you're doing well today. The phone number, if you would like to be a part of the program, is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. You can call in and talk to my call screener. The Cultural Revolution, I'm reading from Wikipedia, was a socio-political purge movement in China. Launched by Mao Zedong, its stated goal was to preserve Chinese communism by purging remnants of capitalist and traditional elements from Chinese society and to reimpose Mao Zedong thought, Maoism, as the dominant ideology in the Communist Party of China. The revolution was Mao's return to the central position of power in China after a period of less radical leadership to recover from the failures of the Great Leap Forward. The Great Leap Forward was this big Chinese technical revolution, or so they thought. It wound up being disastrous. The Cultural Revolution damaged the Chinese economy and traditional culture. Deaths range estimates from hundreds of thousands to 20 million people. Massacres took place across China. Mass cannibalism occurred. Historic relics and artifacts were ransacked, destroyed. There's ransacking cultural and religious sites. There was a failure of a dam. Intellectuals were persecuted. Scholars and scientists were killed or induced to commit suicide. Schools were closed down. Urban intellectual youths were sent to the countryside. It was a fairly awful time where you had really a lot of young people turning on older people. You had everybody had to get on board essentially historic revisionism. It became an anti-scientific, anti-traditional, anti-cultural movement in China to do something new, to impose Chinese views. We are, whether you want to admit it or not, we are in a cultural revolution in this country. It is a slow-rolling cultural revolution, and thankfully, we've got a largely conservative Supreme Court and a functioning Bill of Rights in this country to slow some of this stuff down and stop it if you choose not to engage in it. Unfortunately, too much of the Fortune 500 has decided to become complicit in the left's cultural revolution in this country. LinkedIn has removed a training seminar that told people to be less white after a backlash at Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola had included it in a diversity training seminar. Coca-Cola decided that it needed to get woke. This is from Fox News. The LinkedIn training seminar made headlines this week after screenshots of slides were shared on social media about Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is forcing employees to complete online training, telling them to try to be less white. These images are from an internal whistleblower confronting racism, understanding what it means to be white, challenging what it means to be racist. In the U.S. and other Western nations, white people are socialized to feel they are inherently superior because they are white. Research shows that by age 3 or 4, children understand that it is better to be white. To be less white is to be less oppressive, to be less arrogant, to be less certain, to be less defensive, to be less ignorant, to be more humble, to listen, to believe, to break with apathy, to break with white solidarity. Try to be less white. That's from Coca-Cola. Hello, racists. They've apparently decided they've got to start dyeing the polar bears a different color because they're too white. Can't have them in the Christmas campaign this year. God help Santa Claus. The slides featured texts on what is supposedly it means to be less white, claiming white people in Western nations feel inherently superior. The seminar featured interviews with white author Robin DiAngelo of the book White Fragility. A spokesman for Coca-Cola told Fox News on Monday the seminar was not part of the company's learning curriculum, but it was offered to employees as part of a broader training on diversity, equity. Notice. They no longer talk about equality. They've moved the goalposts. Equality is you and I are equal. Equity is Now we got to take it from those nasty and give it to the other people to make them be equal. We got to repossess. We got to take property. Fox News reached out to LinkedIn after it turned out they were trying to do this as well. And the vice president of corporate communications says their website provides a wide variety of learning content, including more than 270 courses on the topics of diversity, inclusion, and belonging. LinkedIn's owned by Microsoft. It is a cultural revolution in which American corporations are complicit. And our academic institutions are the hotbeds of it. This is from the Daily Wire. A professor at Pacific University in Oregon says he was told to resign or face what would inevitably be a reputation-destroying Title IX inquisition. Inside Higher Ed reports that Richard Paxson, a professor of education at the university, would tell an anecdote during class to explain schema theory. A representation of a plan or theory in the form of an outline. A concept of what is common to all members of a class. The story, which Paxson says he's told before without incident, was meant to illustrate the psychological schema theory of how the mind works, particularly Jean Piaget's notion that schemas develop through a process of assimilation and accommodation. Paxson says that gender is one of the most studied aspects of schema theory, and that humans quickly distinguish between male and female. So he told his students how he and some old graduate school friends once got a surprise after attending a meeting of an American Education Research Association in New Orleans. Looking for a bar to listen to some jazz, after a good dinner, the all-male group headed to a promising spot across the street. Paxson wrote in a summary of the story provided to a reporter. One of the things that got our attention was a group of frankly rather fine-looking ladies standing out front smoking. Looks promising, we said. Yet upon getting closer to where these ladies in short shorts were still hanging out smoking, we noticed a sign above the door. It said, "Y'all come in, world's best female impersonators." Suddenly, our attitudes changed. Our schemas were put in disequilibrium. Paxson said a few nervous comments were exchanged, and we quickly decided to go elsewhere. Paxson said he used the anecdote before without incident, but this time a student accused him of transphobia. Paxson told Inside Higher Ed that after the complaint was made, he was told that if he didn't resign, he would be publicly investigated and then fired. He had until the weekend to decide and was sent a voluntary separation of release agreement the same day. The Trump administration revised Title IX rules to require schools to provide basic due process to those accused of sex discrimination. As Inside Higher Ed reported, Pacific, the university, contradicted those guidelines by telling Paxson the school wouldn't investigate him if he resigned. The original resignation deal offered to Paxson during a virtual meeting, which said he would receive 6 months severance pay. The final deal only gave him 3 months severance pay. He refused to sign the resignation deal and was put on indefinite leave. He says he has received almost no information from Pacific about the investigation, except a memo in December that said additional allegations had been uncovered. Those allegations vaguely accused Paxson of making negative and stereotypical comments about ethnicity and gender, including a claim Paxson called it weird for some women to cry after Hillary Clinton lost. Another claims that Paxson said Jews funded the Revolutionary War. Paxson is Jewish. Paxson also said he hasn't been contacted for his side of the story, and he's obtained counsel. It is a cultural revolution going on in America. It is being seated on academic campuses and spreading through corporate America. My buddy Ryan Anderson, I mentioned this yesterday. Amazon has stopped selling his book, When Harry Became Sally, responding to the transgender movement, but it's worse than that. Let me read you some of what Ryan Anderson wrote. My book, When Harry Became Sally, responding to the transgender moment, was released exactly 3 years ago. It was attacked twice on the New York Times op-ed page. The Washington Post ran a hit piece on it. that was riddled with errors. It was obvious the critics hadn't read the book, but they were threatened by it and wanted to discredit it lest anyone pick it up and learn from it. Now, 3 years after its publication, the same week the House of Representatives plans to ram through the Equality Act, a radical transgender bill amending the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Amazon has erased my book, Opposing Gender Ideology, from its cyber shelves. The people who did read the book discovered it was an accurate and accessible presentation of the scientific, medical, philosophical, and legal debate surrounding the trans phenomenon. Yes, it advances an argument against transgender ideology from a viewpoint, but it doesn't get any facts wrong, and it doesn't engage in heated rhetoric. Moreover, it was praised by experts. The former psychiatrist-in-chief at Johns Hopkins Hospital, a longtime psychology professor at NYU, a professor of medical ethics at Columbia Medical School, a professor of psychology and brain sciences at Boston University, a professor of neurobiology at the University of Utah, a distinguished professor at Harvard Law School, an eminent legal philosopher at Oxford, a professor of jurisprudence at Princeton. But for a heretic hunting left, none of that matters. It's not about how you say it or how rigorously you argue it or how charitable you present it. It's about whether you affirm or dissent from the new orthodoxy of gender ideology. Amazon never informed me or my publisher that it was removing my book, and Amazon's representatives have not responded to our inquiries. Perhaps they're citing a religious objection to selling my book, or maybe they only sell books with which they agree. If so, they've got a lot of explaining to do because they still carry Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf. If there's a religious or speech objection, let's hear it. But if it's just an attempt to skew the conversation in the public square with an attempt to discredit one of the Equality Act's most prominent critics, that's a different matter. So first, a caveat. If you fear what big tech can do if you dissent from gender ideology, just wait to see what big government will do if the so-called Equality Act becomes law. Second, a lesson. If you fear big government, don't turn a blind eye to big tech. Conservatives need to get over the misguided belief that private businesses can do whatever they want. This isn't true, and it's never been the American law on the issue. Nor is it what natural law supports. From a natural law perspective, both the liberal and libertarian approaches to economics and property rights are inadequate. By now, conservatives know well the criticisms of left liberal approaches. But too many conservative thinkers assume that classical liberal or libertarian approaches are in fact the conservative approach. They aren't. They contain important truths, but they omit others. The conservative approach comes out of the natural law tradition. In the natural law tradition, there is no single correct economic system. There are, however, certain systems, such as radically individualist philosophical libertarianism and radically collectivist socialism, that are incompatible with the flourishing of human beings in their communities. But between these extremes lie many permissible regimes of property and market relations. Decent governments create and structure various systems of ownership rights and obligations with an eye to what will best serve the common good of their societies, with their particular histories, traditions, and circumstances. Thus, government regulation of the market isn't inherently wrong. If a particular instance of regulation is wrong, it will be wrong for some others, more specific reasons, which has to be identified on a case-by-case basis. As George Will once observed, the most important 4 words in politics are up to a point. Property rights and economic freedom are important up to a point, where they cease to serve human flourishing. All liberties have limits, so do market liberties. This doesn't mean the government should step in every time a person or business exercises ownership rights in ways that harm the common good. A government willing to do that will ultimately do more harm than good. Still, some regulation is justified. We cannot rule out in advance the possibility that some regulation of big tech's power may be prudent. Now, here's the thing that I did not realize, and which is deeply troubling and which should bother you. Amazon stopped selling Ryan Anderson's book. It's a highly regarded book. I've read it. I've got a copy of it. When Harry Became Sally, responding to the transgender moment. It actually does a very good job fairly outlining the arguments. One of the things I've always noted about conservatism by and large is we tend to be able to articulate the other side's arguments better than they can articulate ours. We try to understand their positions on abortion, even if we disagree on transgenderism and the like. Meanwhile, they just say we're hateful, bigots, and bad. Ryan does a great job in the book. Amazon has not only decided not to sell the book, but Amazon is barring anyone from selling it on Amazon. You literally cannot sell this book through Amazon. They will not distribute it. They will not allow it into their computer system. And they refuse to respond publicly as to why. They will sell Hitler's Mein Kampf. They will not sell Ryan Anderson's When Harry Became Sally. We're in the middle of a cultural revolution. I have long contended that conservatives should be weary of regulating the marketplace or technology companies. I have rapidly been reconsidering that as we see corporation after corporation after corporation falling in with the cultural revolutionary elements, hoping that they will come for them last. I think we have to be willing to distinguish between companies, but I also think we have to recognize that big tech is picking a side, and it is the side most harmful to the First Amendment. And if they're going to become enemies of the First Amendment, they become enemies of the American order. And something is going to have to give. And at the state level, because Republicans are out of power in Washington, state level, a fight is going to be had, and it's going to become a necessary fight, all hands on deck.
There's not my truth or your truth. There is only...
Hi there. I am very happy to have you with me today. The phone number, if you would like to call in and be a part of this here program, is 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. I occasionally change my mind on things. New data should allow us to change our mind. Changes in patterns and practice of behavior should allow us to change our mind. Sometimes you reconsider things that haven't changed and realize you're looking at them from a different perspective. Oftentimes I get asked, have you ever changed your mind on anything? Everyone, particularly everyone who has kids, you change your mind on stuff. There's some things I don't think you can change your mind on without falling out of orthodoxy, for example, in faith. There's sometimes things I think you can't change your mind on without falling out of orthodoxy within conservatism. I'm not a libertarian, though, and I've never been a libertarian. I tend to value, in the balance of things, libertarianism more than socialism. The less government, the better. I tell people all the time, I'm a conservative because I'm a Christian. I believe we're all sinners, and so I want as few in charge of me as possible. But I am rapidly moving in the direction of government policy on tech companies because the tech companies are choosing themselves to pick a side, and that side is not aligned with liberty. We are in this country clearly in the midst of a cultural revolution that is less violent, less deadly, less angry than what happened in China, but is still a cultural revolution where those who are hostile to the values of the United States tear down monuments, claim offense, strip the names off school buildings of the founders of this country, revise history, concoct a mythology on which they then justify what's happening. The 1619 Project, for example, it's a mythology, it's a lie that the New York Times itself has given credit to. You have Amazon disappearing books. They will sell Hitler's Mein Kampf, but they will not sell Ryan Anderson's When Harry Became Sally, a book arguing against transgenderism that is a fair and even-handed book. But it's a topic where you're supposedly a hater if you embrace the ideology, and in fact, most Americans do embrace that ideology. So most Americans are considered haters and not allowed access to that book on Amazon. You have Twitter silencing people that Twitter disagrees with on moral issues. They're not promoting violence. They're not hating. They just look at the world and align with really 5 billion other people on the planet, but it's considered hate to the intellectual elite. Government is going to have to step in here, because big tech and these companies are picking a side, and it's not going to be the federal government doing it. It's going to have to be state governments that are going to have to push back on Coca-Cola, LinkedIn going all woke, on tech companies going woke. Woko haram must be fought.
30.
That requires fighting them in and out of tech industry as well. We cannot allow Woko haram to win in this country. We cannot allow a terrorist group that seeks to destroy the livelihoods and lives of others who refuse to embrace social justice warrior nonsense. We can't allow them to win. Hi there, it is Erick Erickson. Whoa, there's some breaking news. Oh my, great googly moogly, folks. That is the technical term. Wow. A former aide to Governor Andrew Cuomo is accusing the embattled New York leader of sexually harassing her, including unwanted kissing and touching, and says his top female staffers normalize the behavior. Lindsey Boylan, the former deputy secretary for economic development and special advisor to the governor, said Cuomo constantly sought her out and had staffers arrange meetings with her where he made inappropriate comments. Let's play strip poker, Boylan said, Cuomo remarked on a flight from an event in October 2017, according to an essay she wrote on Medium, published this morning. In another encounter, Boylan said Cuomo arranged through a handler to meet her in his Albany office, where she reluctantly agreed to go. She said he gave her a tour of his office, smirked, and showed off a cigar box he said was given to him by Bill Clinton when he served as Housing and Urban Development Secretary. Oh, she interpreted it as a reference to Lewinsky. She said she was warned by other staffers when she joined Cuomo's administration in 2015 to be careful around the governor. Boylan said his behavior was also normalized, particularly by Melissa DeRosa and other top women around him, that only now do I realize how insidious his abuse was. Boylan accused the governor of harassment last year, but didn't elaborate on her experiences at the time. She wrote on Wednesday morning that she expects, quote, the governor and his top aides will attempt to further disparage me, just as they've done with Assemblymember Kim, who came forward last week with his own accusations against the governor's bullying and threatening him. She, however, would not talk to Fox News. Whoa! Wow! So, Andrew Cuomo, he's got a Me Too moment. Will they actually turn? You know, the problem for Andrew Cuomo is that he's not actually useful now. He's not useful to the media now, other than to his brother. He's not useful because Donald Trump's not there. They could prop him up and they could sing his praises when he was in contrast to Donald Trump. But Trump ain't there now, and they're going to have trouble. They're going to have trouble. They should have trouble. It's going to be interesting to see whether the media will CNN cover this? Will CNN cover this story? Will Chris Cuomo cover the story? If he covers it, will he cover it fairly? Makes you wonder. By the way, I got to give, speaking of reporters, I gotta give a shout out to the reporter. I don't even know which one it is. It's an Associated Press reporter. Listen to this exchange at the State Department.
So we'll continue to work closely with Germany. We'll continue to work closely with our other allies and partners in Europe to uphold Europe's own stated energy security goals.
It's a bit disingenuous to claim credit for the 18 companies winding down. All of this work was done under the previous administration.
Matt,
you guys have only been in only been in office for a month, right? Are you telling me that in the last 4 weeks, these 18 companies all of a sudden decide to say, "Oh my God, we better not do anything with Nord Stream 2."
I am speaking for the
all of that.
speaking.
You guys are taking credit for stuff that the previous administration did. Right?
I am not.
No?
I am
Yes
speaking
no?
for the Department of State.
Okay.
The people who have been working this.
Okay.
The people who are working this now were the same people a month ago. Were the same people
3 months ago.
3 months ago. So
okay. All right. So I just
One following up on that. So the administration is committed to ensuring that that pipeline is not completed?
Our position on this has not changed. To Matt's point, we have the same position that the previous administration had. It is a bad deal. It is bad for Europe. It is in contravention of Europe's own stated energy goals.
What? They're taking they can't say the name. He's like Voldemort. Don't you say his name. Trump. If you say his name 3 times, does he show up? Trump. Oh my gosh, they can't do it. They can't bring themselves to say his name. They got his kudos to the Associated Press reporter though for calling him out. Oh my goodness gracious. All right. I gotta talk about something. I gotta talk about I can't even remember. Hang on, Interior Secretary nominee. Holland. That's it. What's her name? Deb Haaland. She's a congresswoman from New Mexico. She would be the first Native American cabinet secretary. Naturally, Democrats are screaming racism that the Republicans are opposed to her nomination. Listen to this exchange. This is I feel like I gotta talk about this issue because my producer cares deeply about this issue, and I'll explain why. I don't want you to hear his voice. You can hear my voice. You can't hear his voice. All you can do is text right now. But listen to this. This is an exchange in the confirmation hearing for Congresswoman Deb Haaland of New Mexico to be the Interior Secretary.
You said that if you had it your way, and I quote, you'd stop oil and gas leasing on public lands. As Secretary, you will get to have it your way. Will you recommend extending the leasing moratorium? And how do you justify this moratorium with the requirements of the federal law under the Mineral Leasing Act?
Senator, it's my understanding that it is a pause on just new leases, not existing valid leases. And if I'm confirmed as Secretary, it is President Biden's agenda, not my own agenda, that I would be moving forward. And appreciate your advice on this issue.
Over the last 2 years, you made numerous statements in opposition to energy development, including, and I quote you, no new pipelines in August of 2018. You called for a ban on fracking in 2020. Oil and gas development on public lands generates huge revenues for local schools, essential services. I have one county in Montana that over 90% of the revenues go to their schools come from pipelines. Unfortunately, this is not the case for wind and solar development on federal lands. What is your plan to make up for any lost local revenue for public safety and children's education?
Senator, as I mentioned earlier, if I'm confirmed as Secretary, it is President Biden's agenda that I would move forward, not my own. And I absolutely, nobody wants children to not have schools.
You earlier said you want to let the science and the data dictate policy and outcomes, if I could somewhat paraphrase what you said. So I assume you would want to make sure you look at the science and the data and not just blindly follow any administration.
Well, I apologize, Senator. Yes, the science and the data, I'm assuming would go without saying because I realize that the department relies on science, but
do you
you got that one? This is really important to understand what's going on here. There are parts of this country or local areas, Montana is an example of this, where local governments in certain areas have relied on oil or gas revenue to help subsidize, help cover the costs of local education, local sheriff's departments, local economies. And the Biden administration intends to crack down on that. And if they shut this stuff down, those local communities are going to suffer. Now, most of them are in states that won't vote for Joe Biden, and so Joe Biden doesn't care. That's part of the problem here, is the Biden administration is willing to wreak havoc on parts of the country that didn't vote for him. Montana went for Trump. And so the Biden administration doesn't worry about that. Charlie did text me, and I don't want to be flippant here. This actually is a real issue. He says this engagement with Steve Daines from Montana with this Deb Haaland person, commenting on oil, gas, and coal funding schools in Montana. It's a bigger deal than even Steve Daines makes it. Charlie says his hometown in Montana, the entirety of the schools, the high school, the grade school, they're all tied directly to the coal mines in the area. You close them down and the schools go with it unless you raise taxes to a point the small towns will shut down. Everybody's talking about it. It actually is a big deal. There are parts of Louisiana where there's oil and natural gas in areas where the tax revenue generated in poor parts of the state, the tax revenue generates income for local governments and local school systems. You shut it down, you're shutting down small town America. There is a cultural bias as we go through this cultural revolution in this country. There's a cultural bias against small town America. Believe it or not, though, there are farmers out there in the country, and they don't live in cities, and they don't commute out into the country to grow the crops. They live by the crops. My mother-in-law's family is from southern Illinois. They're corn farmers. And they live by the fields. They're not going to commute from Chicago, a multiple-hour drive down to southern Illinois. It's like a 6-hour drive from Chicago down to the southern tip of Illinois. They're not going to do it. There's a bias in the Biden administration on the progressive left that lives in cities and doesn't really understand people out in the heartland. You shut down the oil, you shut down the natural gas, you shut down the coal mines, you're killing off parts of this country. And here's the irony is that you can't really get rid of this stuff anyway. You're not going to get rid of natural gas. You're not going to get rid of oil. You're not going to get rid of coal. You're still going to need it, maybe in different capacities, but you're still going to need it. That people in the Biden administration don't realize this, they're out to lunch on this stuff, is not good. And, you know, she's voted, this woman, Deb Haaland, has voted against all sorts of positions related to fracking and drilling. She's opposed fracking. She doesn't get fracking. She thinks fracking is bad. And they're going to come for these industries in these small towns across America, in rural parts of the country. They're going to hurt them. At some point, you know, there's already conversations happening that maybe the country's too far gone. Maybe we're too divided. And the left always says, well, you know, you people on the right, you need to surrender. You need to surrender. Well, they're not going to surrender. They're not going to surrender. They got no business surrendering. At some point, people on the left and people on the right need to realize just leave each other alone. But part of that also comes from if you destroy the economy of a state, there will be repercussions for you. And when you're targeting a lot of these states that have coal mines or natural gas, there are going to be negative repercussions on you. And the Biden administration, if they really want unity, they need to be mindful of these things. You're destroying not just people's ways of life, you're destroying entire economic systems in the country. And that's not sustainable, and it just puts a lot of people out of work, and those people have friends, and those friends will take it out on you politicians. All this means, I mean, the Republicans, their day of coming back into Congress seems to be very soon, the way the Democrats are headed, if the GOP can try to avoid a civil war.
There's not my truth or your truth.
Hello there, it is Erick Erickson. I'm glad to have you with me today. Folks, keep Tiger Woods in your prayers. My goodness, he delivered such an amazing comeback several years ago, and then for this car wreck yesterday. Here's Alex Villanueva. He's the sheriff out where he had his car wreck.
Can you talk about the conditions inside the car? Was the strap was able to move at all?
Well, the interior of the cabinet of the vehicle was more or less intact. The front end was totally destroyed. The bumpers, everything was destroyed. Airbags deployed, all of that. And however, thankfully, the interior was more or less intact, which kind of gave him the cushion to survive what's otherwise would have been a fatal crash.
The CEO of UCLA Medical Center says Woods suffered comminuted open fractures, bones that were broken into more than two pieces, and with breaks in the skin in the upper and lower portion of the tibia and fibula of his right leg. Surgeons placed a rod into the tibia of Woods' right leg. They used a combination of screws and pins to stabilize injuries to his foot and ankle. Mahajan, the doctor, said Woods suffered trauma to the muscle and soft tissue of his right leg. The covering of the muscles had to be released to relieve pressure due to swelling. They did not include details on his left leg. Woods' agent, Mark Steinberg, said there were multiple injuries to legs. He is awake. He is responsive. There was a statement by Tiger Woods. His team put it on Twitter. We thank everyone for the overwhelming support and messages during this tough time. As previously communicated, Tiger was involved in a single car accident earlier this morning in California. He's undergone a long medical surgical procedure on his lower right leg and ankle before being brought to the hospital. Mr. Woods suffered significant orthopedic injuries to his right lower extremity that were treated during emergency surgery by orthopedic trauma specialists at Harbor UCL Medical Center, a level 1 trauma center. Comminuted open fractures affecting both the upper and lower portions of the tibia and fibula bones were stabilized by inserting a rod into the tibia. Additional injuries to the bones of the foot and ankle were stabilized with a combination of screws and pins. Trauma to the muscle and soft tissue of the leg required surgical release of the covering of the muscle to relieve pressure due to swelling, according to Anish Mahajan, the chief medical officer and CEO of Harbor UCLA Medical Center. Tiger is currently awake, responsive, and recovering in his hospital room. Thank you to the wonderful doctors and hospital staff, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and Fire Department. Your support and assistance has been outstanding. There are no further updates at this time. We continue to thank you for your well wishes and privacy for him. And then there's this. You might recognize this guy's voice.
Joining me now by phone, President Donald Trump. Mr. President, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hi, Katie.
Great to hear from you. So, of course, you are friends with Tiger Woods. You spent a lot of time with him. And when you hear anybody's in an accident, it's a horrific thing to witness, but especially someone that you know. And we're all happy that he's okay. And how did you react when you first heard the news this morning?
Well, I was really surprised. And, you know, he's doing so well. He's getting the back in shape, and then a thing like this happens. He's had a big problem, as you know, with his back for a long period of time, and it's amazing. He won the Masters, and he won the Masters with a bad back, which tells you the level of talent is incredible. And he's been working on that, and then he has this happen. It's just tragic.
You know, Mr. President, you awarded the Medal of Freedom to Tiger Woods in 2019. Let's listen to what you had to say about him then, and then we'll get your thoughts on the other side.
In the presence of a true legend. In the presence of a true legend, an extraordinary athlete who has transformed golf and achieved new levels of dominance. He's also a great person. He's a great guy. Tiger introduced countless new people to the sport of golf from every background and from every walk of life. He inspired millions of young Americans with his thrilling wire-to-wire victories. Tiger Woods is a global symbol of American excellence, devotion, and drive.
And in that speech, you also talked about how he's a comeback kid and how he's been able to overcome a number of obstacles. So maybe we'll see him back out on the golf course after this.
Well, I hope so. He's overcome a lot, and but you know he's had an incredible life, and he's going to continue to have an incredible life. But now he'll recover from this. It's pretty bad on the legs, I understand, and you know, he'll figure a way. But he's a wonderful person.
He's lucky to be alive. Apparently was driving fast. His car flipped multiple rolls. Keep him in your prayers. Can I just say it's nice to hear Donald Trump engage with something like that? It reminds me before he ran for president how he would call in, and he was always good on pop culture. He was always good on celebrity news and his takes on stuff. Remember the Robert Pattinson stuff? It's just, it was kind of nice to hear that interview, and he's not engaged in politics. A listener actually sent me a text last night and said, if he runs again in 2024, don't you think it's advantageous to him to not be on Twitter? Yeah, I do. Part of me still thinks if he hadn't been on Twitter, he would have won in 2020. Because when you look at the people who turned against him, in large part they turned against him. Well, part of it, the handling of the virus, but also people just got tired of him. They got tired of the drama. And if he comes back in 2024 and he runs, like apparently he's going to have a big speech at CPAC and basically going to be, see, I told you this stuff was going to happen with Biden. And he's right. A lot of the stuff he said Biden was going to do, Biden's doing it. And he can say, see, I told you so. And he can run in 2024 on see, I told you so. But man, it's just, it was endearing. Again, it reminds you why so many people connected to him in the first place. He can get in, he can talk about pop culture and celebrity, and he knows these guys. He's got some insight. He clearly cares for the guy. It was nice to hear that personality come back out. And just keep Tiger Woods in your prayers. Man, that guy, if he can do this again, what a comeback. What a comeback. Even if he tries. The story of him doing it. But right now he's got to get well. He's got to recover. He already had back surgery and now this. So pray for Tiger Woods, folks. Keep him in your prayers. I will be back with you guys tomorrow for a whole lot more. Y'all have a great rest of the day.